I still remember the smell of disinfectant and rot. Not the kind of rot that comes from time. No, this one felt alive. It clung to the back of your throat, made your stomach twist, and stayed there long after you'd left. Back in 1994, I worked as a night security guard at St. Augustine Memorial Hospital, just outside of Fairview, Ohio. The place had been shut down for over a decade after a fire broke out on the 3rd floor, killing 3 patients and a nurse. Since then, people in town said it was cursed. Teenagers would break in for dares. Locals claimed to see lights in the windows at night, and some swore they still heard sirens echoing from the hill where the hospital stood. I didn't believe in any of that. I just needed the paycheck. They told me my job was simple. Stay in the main lobby from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Walk the halls once every hour, and make sure nobody trespassed. No patrol outside, no weapons, just me, a flashlight, and a radio that worked half the time. Simple, right? The hospital sat on a lonely stretch of road, surrounded by leafless trees and tall dead grass that whispered whenever the wind picked up. It was a hulking, 4-story building with cracked windows and faded paint that peeled like old skin. The sign out front still said, St. Augustine Memorial, serving since 1928. That first night, I parked my car near the side entrance. Even before I stepped out, I felt it, an awful stillness, like the whole world had stopped breathing. My boots crunched over broken glass as I walked inside. The heavy steel doors groaned behind me, sealing the sound of the outside world away. The lobby was massive, ceilings so high they disappeared into shadows. My flashlight beam bounced across the floor, catching dust motes that drifted lazily in the air. Every sound echoed, the click of my belt buckle, the creak of my boot leather. It all came back to me in waves. There was a reception desk in the middle of the room, papers still scattered across it like someone had left in a hurry. A faint smell of mildew and chemicals lingered in the air. The lights, of course, didn't work. My only illumination was the flashlight and the occasional flash of distant lightning through boarded windows. Around 11:30 p.m., the power flickered, just once, enough to make the overhead lights hum for half a second, before dying again. I hadn't touched the generator. It wasn't even supposed to be running. I told myself it was just leftover charge in the lines. Old buildings do weird things. By midnight, the temperature had dropped sharply. My breath came out in faint clouds. I sat behind the reception desk, sipping cold coffee from a thermos, trying not to think about how every creak in the building sounded like footsteps. Then I heard it, a bell. It wasn't loud, not even close, just a soft, metallic ding, faint and sharp, cutting through the silence like a whisper through a graveyard. I froze. It came from down the west corridor, the one marked Ward C. I remembered the supervisor's warning. Don't go near Ward C. It's sealed off. Unsafe structure. I told myself to ignore it. Just a sound. Maybe something fell. Maybe it was a pipe. Maybe. Anything but what it sounded like. I lasted about 3 minutes before curiosity won. With the flashlight in one hand and my radio in the other, I made my way down the west corridor. My footsteps echoed, hollow and uneven. The deeper I went, the colder it became, like the air was thinning. The walls were covered in pale green tiles, half of them cracked or missing. Rust stains ran down like dried blood. My light picked up faded signs. Recovery room, radiology, intensive care. There was a faint breeze, though every window was sealed. And then it rang again. The bell, closer this time. I stopped, listening hard. Ding! The sound came from somewhere near the end of the hall. The double doors to Ward C stood there, chained shut with a thick metal lock. Or at least, they had been. Now the chain was lying on the floor. Someone, or something, had unlatched it. Every instinct I had told me to turn around, walk back, sit down, and pretend I hadn't heard a thing. but the curiosity that gets men killed. That's a stubborn thing. I pushed the doors open. They gave a low, shuddering groan, like something waking from a long, bad dream. The air that spilled out was heavy, damp, and smelled of rot and old medicine. My flashlight beam cut through swirling dust and caught the shapes of rusted beds lined up against the walls. Sheets hung in tatters. A few IV stands leaned sideways, tubes still dangling like vines. The bell chimed again, somewhere deeper inside. I started walking, each step stirring the dust off the floor. The tiles were slick with moisture, my boots squeaking slightly. I kept the light steady, scanning from bed to bed. Patient charts still hung at the foot of a few. Most were blank, but one had a name scribbled in faded ink. I leaned closer, squinting. The name had been scratched out. That's when I saw it. At the very end of the hallway, near the nurse's station, something flickered, a pale shape, barely visible, like light bending the wrong way. For a second, I thought it was just my eyes adjusting. But then it moved, slowly, deliberately. I froze. My throat went dry. "Hello," I called out, voice cracking. "Who's there?" No answer. I took another step forward, flashlight trembling slightly. The light hit an old door, hanging slightly open. Its plaque was barely legible beneath the grime, but I could make out the words, Dr. Ellman. Intensive care. Something about that name made my stomach turn. Inside, the room looked different from the rest of the ward. Cleaner, less decayed. The bed was neatly made. Instruments sat in an orderly row on a metal tray, gleaming faintly as if they'd been wiped just hours ago. And there, on the bed, lay a patient file. I picked it up. The pages were yellowed, edges brittle, but the handwriting was neat and deliberate. October 12th, 1983. Patient name, unknown male. Status, under observation. Claims hospital staff disappeared, exhibiting signs of acute paranoia. My eyes lingered on the last line. Someone had scribbled a note beneath it in darker ink. Do not discharge. Keep under constant supervision. Before I could read further, the air changed. The temperature plummeted. My breath came out in a white cloud. Then I heard it again. The bell. But this time, it was close. Right behind me. I turned slowly, heart pounding against my ribs. The beam of my flashlight shaking as it swept across the room. The doorway stood empty. The corridor beyond was nothing but black, still. I could feel it. Someone standing there, watching, breathing. I took one step backward, eyes locked on the darkness beyond the door. My flashlight flickered once, twice, then steadied again. There was nothing there, but the silence that followed was worse than the sound. It felt like the building was holding its breath, waiting for me to make the next move. Low, tense breath. That's when the bell rang a final time, long and sharp, from somewhere deep in the corridor. And this time, the sound echoed like laughter. When I turned toward the sound, my flashlight flickered, its beam slicing through the dark like a knife through fog. The hallway outside room 302 looked emptier than before, the air thicker somehow. The tiles seemed darker too, almost wet. The sound of the bell still lingered in my ears, soft and metallic. But what came after was worse. Silence. Not peaceful silence, but that dense, heavy kind that makes your heartbeat sound like footsteps. I told myself I imagined it. Maybe the old wiring was causing the bell to buzz, or a pipe was knocking, or maybe it was the wind. But the doors in Ward C didn't have gaps. There was no wind in here. I stepped into the hall and the beam of my flashlight slid across faded green tiles, cracked signs, and a discarded wheelchair. Then the lights, those dead fluorescent tubes that hadn't worked in years, flickered on by themselves. Blink, 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 one after another, like a trail of breadcrumbs leading back toward the main lobby. Each flicker hummed louder, like static building in the air. I didn't need to be told twice. Something in my gut screamed, "Leave." I started walking, fast but careful, trying not to run, because running felt like admitting I wasn't alone. The air grew colder as I passed each flickering light, and that smell, sweet, sick, metallic, was getting stronger. Halfway down the hall, all the lights went out at once. Bang! A sound like the building itself exhaled. Then nothing but darkness. My flashlight stuttered. Once, twice. Then it came back on. I could see the floor again. And something else. An empty gurney was rolling slowly toward me from the far end of the hall. Its wheels squeaked in uneven rhythm. I stood still, frozen, as it came closer, and stopped just a few feet away. The sheet draped over it was stained a deep brown. Darker near the middle, my throat tightened. "Who's there?" Silence, then clink. The bell again. It was right next to my ear this time. Faint but sharp enough to make me flinch. I spun around, my flashlight catching glimpses of peeling wallpaper, rusted lockers, a collapsed ceiling tile. But no one, no movement. The static hum was back now, faint but present, like a radio tuned to a dead channel. I raised my radio. "Base, this is Unit 12. You there? Only static." I tried again. "Base, I've got movement in Ward C. I think someone broke in." More static, but under it, faintly, there was a voice. A man's voice. Whispering numbers. 3, 0, 2. I froze. What? The voice grew slightly louder. 3, 0, 2, 3, 0, 2. I dropped the radio. It hit the floor with a sharp clack that echoed down the hall. The whispering didn't stop. It just faded into a breathy laugh. And then, gone. Something inside me snapped. I turned and ran. My flashlight bobbed wildly as I bolted down the hall toward the lobby. My boots slipped once on the wet tile, but I didn't stop. When I finally reached the main entrance, my lungs burned. The double doors were wide open. Their heavy chains snapped like they'd been torn apart. A cold fog had rolled in from outside, thick and swirling, hiding everything beyond the first few feet. My car wasn't visible anymore, neither was the road. It was like the world beyond the hospital had vanished. I called out again, voice shaking. "Is anyone out there? Hello?" No answer. Just the slow creak of something shifting above me, like the building itself was groaning. I grabbed the radio again. "Base, I need a response right now. The front doors are open." The static hissed for a few seconds before the voice came back. This time it wasn't whispering numbers. It was whispering words. "Get back to your post." The voice was calm. Too calm. Familiar. It sounded like mine. That was when I realized. The static wasn't just coming from the radio. It was coming from everywhere. The vents, the floors, the walls. It buzzed softly, like thousands of tiny wires humming in sync. I backed toward the reception desk, eyes darting across the lobby. My flashlight flickered again, and for a second, just a second, I saw a shape reflected in the dark glass of the main door. A man, tall, thin, pale skin stretched tight over a face that didn't blink. His hospital gown clung to his body like paper, and his head tilted ever so slightly, as if he was trying to understand what I was. When my light steadied again, the glass was empty. I stumbled backward and fell against the desk. The flashlight rolled from my hand and spun in a slow circle on the tile floor, its beam flashing across walls, lined with faded medical posters. In that brief strobe of light, I saw something new. Footprints, wet ones, leading from the corridor all the way to the reception area. They stopped right in front of me. The flashlight beam stopped spinning, landing directly on the final footprint. It was pressed deep into the dust, fresh and perfect. And then, a drop of water hit my wrist. I looked up. Above me, the ceiling vent was dripping. The droplets weren't clear. They were dark, almost black, thick like ink. I stood up slowly, eyes still on the vent. The drip stopped. Then, from inside it, I heard that slow, ragged breathing again. It sounded human, but wrong. I backed away, heart pounding in my throat. The light flickered again, once, twice, then steadied on the hallway I'd come from. For just a split second, I saw someone standing there, a man in a hospital gown, pale, thin, his head tilted. His eyes were hollow sockets, like someone had scooped them out. He didn't move, didn't even breathe. Then the light went out. The flashlight hit the floor with a dull clunk, and in that instant of pitch-black silence, I heard the bell one last time, louder than before, ding right behind me. I ran for the doors, bursting through the fog into the freezing night. I didn't stop until I was halfway down the hill, lungs burning, the hospital a black silhouette behind me. When I looked back, I swear I saw a light flicker in one of the upper windows. Just one, like someone standing there, watching. I didn't go back. Not that night, not ever. But 3 days later, I saw it on the news. The headline read, "Fire destroys abandoned hospital. Electrical fault suspected." They said it started somewhere in Ward C, the same corridor I'd walked through, the same place where the chain had been broken. Only one thing survived the fire, a brass plaque found in the ashes. It read, "Room 302, intensive care. Dr. Elman's patient, in recovery." That line burned into my head. In recovery? What the hell did that mean? Weeks went by. I tried to forget it. Told myself I imagined everything. The bell, the voice, the figure, all of it. Maybe it was carbon monoxide, or sleep deprivation, or just nerves. But sometimes, late at night, when I can't sleep, I hear that sound again. That faint, metallic ding. It doesn't come from outside. It comes from the other side of my wall. Like someone's calling for a nurse that isn't coming. I get up, check the room, check the halls, check everything. There's never anyone there. But every time I turn back, the sound stops. And there's that faint smell again. Disinfectant and rot. The last patient never left St. Augustine. He just found a new ward.
Please like and subscribe channel Fear Frequency for more horror stories. Thank you.